Hello. So, another video for you. This week we're talking about Mary, which is very exciting. She's a wonderful person to talk about. My hope is that this video gives you some great insight into some things you already knew about Mary, but on a deeper level. And that then when you go to the activities with your children, that you have great new insights to share with them about Mary. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due. Everything you're going to hear from this video came from this fancy little book here. Whenever we happen to all come back to the building, it is on our shelf on the stewardship rack, so you can get a copy for yourself whenever we come back. But let's dive into Mary. I'm going to hit 4 points about Mary. That she's the mother of God, and what that means. The idea that she has perpetual virginity before, during, and after the birth of Jesus. That she is the Immaculate Conception, or was born without sin, and then her assumption into heaven. So there's so many more things you can talk about Mary, but those are 4 big highlights. So let's dive in. Mother of God. Alright, so to understand Mary as the mother of God, there's a lot of confusion around that. People say, well, does that mean she birthed God or that she created God? Because we think mother, we often think someone who created a child or was the cause of a child. And that's not the most accurate definition of mother. Really, what we can call a mother is, now don't put this on a Hallmark card because you ain't going to get any points for defining mom this way, but a woman who passes her nature onto her child. And then likewise, the father can be a man who passes his nature onto a child. And this is a much more accurate definition of mother and motherhood, because realistically, we know biologically that's exactly what's happening. So a child is a blending of the nature of mom and dad. But even in adoption, mom might not be able to pass on her physical nature to her child, but mannerisms, the way she thinks, attitudes, ideas, beliefs, all of that can be passed on to even an adopted child, so that in some way, mom's mental and spiritual nature is passed on to her adopted child. So a woman who shares her nature with her child. When we look at Mary as the mother of God in that sense, this makes a lot more sense. Mary did not create God. Mary allowed herself to be a vessel by which God could enter into human nature, her human nature. And this is also going to be very important as we go through the other teachings, about the necessity for Mary to be sinless and be mother of God. So that's what we mean when we say Mary, mother of God. Not that she created God, but that she allowed her human nature to be passed on to Jesus so that God could enter into humanity. Now, her perpetual virginity. Like I said, Mary was a virgin before the birth of Jesus, during her birthing of Jesus, and after the birth of Jesus. And there's arguments about that, but really the most strongest point we have to believe in Mary's perpetual virginity is her interaction with the angel Gabriel. Gabriel says, "You're going to be the mother of God." And her response is, "How can this be, for I know not man?" And that statement, "I know not man," is very significant. First, let's talk about the knowing part. So if you read the Old Testament or listen to the Old Testament at all, you can catch on very quickly what the Bible means by knowing someone. I'll give you some examples. Adam knew his wife and she conceived and bore Cain. Adam knew his wife again and she conceived and bore Abel. Joseph knew his wife. Jacob knew his wife. Abraham knew his wife. There's a lot of knowing going on in the Bible. And we can all figure out very easily what we're talking about here. Reproduction. And so that's what they mean when they say knowing. So when Mary says, "I know not man," she means I'm not having sex. It's not happening. But it's a stronger statement than that. I mean, if Mary was just saying, basically, if Mary was just asking, well, who's the father going to be? She's a stinking idiot, because she's also betrothed to Joseph. I mean, how much more obvious can it get? like if she's just wondering who the father's going to be, that's a very dumb question to ask. But her statement goes beyond that. Her statement is one about her state of being. It's very similar to if someone offered me a cigarette and said, "Nate, would you like a cigarette?" I'd say, "No, I don't smoke." Meaning I didn't smoke before, I don't smoke now, and I don't smoke in the future, because it's not a part of who I am. It's just not part of what I do. And that's kind of the statement Mary's making is, I know not man. I haven't known a man before. I don't know a man now, and I'm not going to know him later. Because it points to this vow of virginity that we traditionally believe Mary had taken. And a vow of virginity that she's had from very young age. Like, it wasn't like she knew a man and then say, hey, you know what, I should take that vow of virginity. No, this is something she's been doing her whole life, and she intends to do for her whole life. And it also is great that we see this in her, because it really mimics what priests and religious are doing when they take their vow of chastity, this idea of giving our whole selves to God, including our sexuality. And so this idea of I know not man is the strongest argument we have for Mary's perpetual virginity. Now, during the birthing of Jesus, that gets a little more foggy, because we don't exactly know how that happened. What we do know is Mary is free of sin, and so therefore she was free from any consequences of sin. One of the consequences of sin was labor pains and the pain of the birthing process. So she would not have experienced that. We know that much. Now, how the actual birthing of Jesus happened, we don't know the details. What we do believe is that it happened in some miraculous format. What that format was, we don't know, but we believe it was a miraculous format which would have preserved Mary's vow of virginity. And this also makes sense, because again, if Mary is giving God a vow of virginity, giving God her virginity, it would make sense that God would respect that and respect that vow in the process of bringing Jesus into the world, rather than breaking that vow on Mary's behalf, something like that. And then finally, after the birth of Jesus, the common argument is, well, what about the scripture of, your mother and your brothers are waiting for you? Well, mother is not too hard. That doesn't cause any problems. But brother, I'm sure you've all heard this, that word brother in the original translation of the Bible, it's so vague. It can mean like brother, sister, cousin, distant relative, guy I just met on the street, random stranger walking by. Basically, anyone who is a human being and has a pulse, that word brother could be applied to. And so we traditionally believe that was not a reference to actual biological brothers, especially in the context of what Jesus' reply was, which is for a different video on a different day, but especially in the context of what Jesus' reply was about who his mothers and his brothers are. So Mary was the mother of God. She was perpetually a virgin. Her immaculate conception, or that she was born sinless. So Mary, you and I, we need baptism in the church to take care of this problem called sin. However, Mary also would have needed some sort of cure for the problem of sin, because she is a human person. She would have been born into a world of sin just like all of us. The difference is, God took the merits of the death of Jesus Christ and applied them to Mary's soul at the instant of her conception, so that from the very first moment of her life, Mary was free of sin. She had already been saved by Jesus before she was even born, and from the first moment of her life. And so it wasn't a matter of, Mary is some odd exception to humanity. It's just that she got the benefits of Jesus' death before anybody else. And this is good. This is important that this is a real thing. Because if Mary is not sinless, then what happens when she passes her nature onto Jesus? She passes a sinful nature onto Jesus. And then Jesus can't save us because he has a sinful nature. Not to even mention the crazy idea of God entering into his sinful nature, which is not possible. It can't happen. So we need Mary to be sinless to have Jesus to be able to save us. Then finally, her assumption to heaven. Again, Mary is sinless, which means she's free of all the effects of sin. One of the effects of sin is corruption of the body. So old age, heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, all sorts of wonderful things that can happen to the human person. All of those she would be free from. She would not have suffered from any of them. She would not have died from old age. She would have died whenever Jesus was ready to call her home. And we believe that she was taken into heaven, body and soul. One, Jesus did so as an act of love for his mother, but two, as an example for where we are heading, that we too one day will be in heaven, body and soul. And how she got there was a whole bunch of debate on that. a number of years ago, there's a whole bunch of debate on it. The first side said, oh, well, Mary didn't die. She just, poof, assumed body, soul into heaven, no death, instantaneous effect. It just happened. The other side said, oh no, she went through this period of dormation where she died for 3 days to mimic her son and then was assumed body and soul into heaven. And they went back and forth, argue. Finally they tell the Pope, just tell us what we should believe. So the Pope thinks about it, prays about it, and he says nothing. Nothing at all, because what he came up with is he said, whether Mary died or did not die is not important in terms of our salvation. What's important is that we believe that she did not die from any form of corruption of the body, old age, heart attack, stroke, etc., and that she was assumed body and soul into heaven. So we can believe that she was dormant for 3 days and then assumed, or just automatically assumed. Either one is fine. What's important is that we understand that she didn't die from corruption of the body and that she went body and soul into heaven. So these four truths here, they're really great truths about Mary, and the cool part is they all are interwoven together too. After all, we said if Mary was going to be a mother of God, she needed to be sinless, so that she would have a sinless nature to pass on to Jesus. If she's sinless, then she has the ability to live a truly human life like we are all called to do. And so it would make perfect sense that she would take a vow of virginity and give herself completely to God. That's in line with somebody who is sinless and completely devoted to God. And if she's sinless and completely devoted to God, it also makes sense that she would be assumed into heaven and avoid the pains of death like you and I are going to have to suffer at some point. And so these are all interwoven together, and they only paint a small portion of the picture of Mary. There's so much more, but these are the ones we're focusing on. I hope you got some value from it and that you enjoy the activities we planned for you. Have a wonderful day and stay healthy.